This is a story I ran across on my X feed. This is on May 22nd. It is from the Associated Press. The headline of the story: the sun's magnetic field may form close to the surface. This finding could improve solar storm forecasts. Now, this drew my attention because we're talking about solar storms, and most people don't even understand storms that are on Earth in our troposphere. And yet, solar storms are mentioned in the news more and more and more. And I think there's probably a misconception of what a solar storm really is. It's basically just a flare of energy from the sun that is happening via sunspots, various things at the sun's surface. But it really is not weather. It's technically not weather at all. It's just energetic happenings on the surface of the sun. But we refer to these as solar storms, and I think that kind of implies that there's some connection between what happens on the surface of the sun and what's happening with storms on the Earth's surface, but there's no connection. All right, a storm, as we know from the water cycle we've learned in previous videos, a storm on the Earth's surface is from the interaction of water and heat and the water cycle. It has nothing to do with solar storms that we talk about in this particular story. This story really talks about the fact that there's the magnetic field at the sun appears to generate 20,000 miles beneath the sun's surface. Previous calculations put the process more than 130,000 miles below. All right. The sun's intense magnetic energy is the source of solar flares and eruptions of plasma known as coronal mass ejections, and those basically are the reason we see the aurora when those kind of explode and we get that energy crossing between the sun and the Earth's poles, and then that gets into the magnetic, comes through that little gap in the magnetic field of the polar regions of the Earth, and that's what causes the aurora. I talk about that in another video, but this again is a story that is making headlines that, in my mind, it's making headlines, but it's basically, I think for most people, it's confusing because we're talking about they're calling it a solar storm again. That's what it is, technically, scientifically speaking. But I think unless we offer a more in-depth explanation of what this all means, and that it's not connected with our weather, really, it's connected with other things, but it's not directly connected with our water cycle and things like that we experience physically as weather on Earth. So, again, I think it's just interesting that, again, an example of how media it grabs onto a story and that has been in the news and the headlines because the aurora was in early May. We had an unusually strong one, visible far south. And then we kind of put these stories in the news, but without any context or explanation. So I think it helps kind of put it in place where we need to really think about when you look at these stories and when you publish these stories, you need to add some context too so people understand what they truly mean. Just again, another example of weather and extreme weather and science in the news. I hope you found this a little bit interesting. I did, as I was just scanning a feed and ran across